In anticipation of this gift, Rebecca asked me which photo I'd like hanging above my desk. And I knew that this was the one. Because for me, this picture is the embodiment of Encounter story, though it may not be obvious why at first glance. I'd like to share with you why it means so much to me. The first ever Encounter trip 6 years ago held a scene much like this one. Rabbinical students, somewhat stiff rabbinical students, were swinging their hips in imitation of Palestinian adolescents. A young Palestinian man who had recently confessed to me his struggle to remain committed to nonviolence in the face of the escalating situation was now exuberantly beating drums, with 2 yeshiva students learning in a neighboring settlement. The room was virtually exploding with clapping, stomping, dancing, sheer joy. But I don't love this scene because it's a feel-good image of Palestinians and Jews dancing together or sharing superficial joy. You'll hear some echoes with some things that Sammy said. On the surface, this is actually a scene I might have dismissed as perfectly nice but ultimately irrelevant. This was the end of the Second Intifada, and many of us were asking, what did all of these small-scale Oslo-era initiatives bringing together Jewish and Arab musicians and teachers really accomplish in the big picture? And this is also a scene, as Sammy said, that many of the Palestinians in the room typically would have spurned as an expression of what many term normalization, that is, eating hummus together while pretending nothing's wrong. And this is a scene many of the Jews in the room might similarly have written off as something only for fringe peaceniks, dodging or masking the real dangers around us with kumbaya naivete. But this felt different. This gathering felt monumental. First of all, this was a scene of unusual suspects, as you've heard a few times tonight, people who were never to be found in such a scene: orthodox, centrist, right-wing, left-wing, young Jews who were change agents and multipliers in their own networks. These were the right people, with social capitals in communities beyond the increasingly marginalized secular leftist peace bubble. As Miriam said, we didn't know we were soon going to be bringing AIPAC Federation, American Friends of Likud, Jewish agency leaders on these trips, but we had already gathered that if we were to create not only individual change, but widespread culture change, that we needed to reach power brokers and trusted messengers to new constituencies. And even more importantly than the right people being in the room, the magic of this moment was that we had inverted all of those well-intentioned, but ultimately limited people-to-people initiatives that had swept all the hard stuff under the rug in the name of rehumanizing and restoring basic relationship. Rather than look away from what was hardest, we leaned into it. In the 12 hours previous, there had been no evasion or sidestepping. We had listened to the stories of traumatized children, bereaved parents, enraged activists. We had disagreed vehemently within the Jewish group over the morality of the separation barrier, the collapse of the peace process, the rightful future of Jerusalem, refugees, and the boundaries of this land. We hadn't ignored the harsh realities around us or the sharp differences among us. We had created a model that could hold Palestinian and Jew, right and left, religious and secular, in conversation with each other. And with the support of our carefully crafted programmatic structure, our participants had confronted scary, destabilizing, at times shattering perspectives. And it turned out the sky didn't fall, but the earth cracked open. It turned out they had so much to say to each other when they were supported to do so. They had hung on despite all impulse to shut down. They had listened to people they might otherwise have avoided, and they were buzzing with new possibilities, more sophisticated and creative thinking. So they were, in this moment, exhausted and shell-shocked, and yet perhaps a bit intoxicated and proud of having having risen to the challenge, and so they danced. This was not the dancing of escape or forgetful oblivion, sheltering ourselves or making light of the troubles outside. This was the dancing, the profound release of having confronted those troubles head on with eyes wide open, of having faced our fears and our blind spots sufficiently to awaken, to open ourselves wherever we stood to the limitations of our prior worldviews and the wisdom of Jews and Palestinians we had previously dismissed. This was the dancing of relief, of walking through fire and coming out the other side, of doing what we most feared and most needed. I thought to myself, looking around me at such a scene, this is it. I've done what I came to the world to do. The next day when we returned to Jerusalem, a participant said to me, I think I just encountered what everyone around me is blocking, what this separation barrier is conditioning us to forget at our own peril. And that was how the name for Encounter was born. In the 6 years that have passed, despite the rapid growth of our impact, we are still swimming upstream. And avoidance, unfortunately, has only intensified in our community. If already in 2005 a climate prevailed of forgetting about the Palestinians behind the separation barrier, now there's a regretful, if understandable, trend of the conflict, if not Israel altogether, becoming the troublesome elephant in the room in congregations, campuses, classrooms, and communal organizations. It's just too volatile, divisive, and messy to go there. But this internal, communal inability to grapple with what's hardest across political lines without rancorous antagonism is as potentially destructive to our future as the Israeli-Palestinian conflict itself. And so in these same years, we've brought Encounter's methods to new areas, communal institutions like the JCPA and Hillel. We've sought our guidance in creating a more open and respectful conversation about Israel. Day schools who are piloting our new Israel education curriculum, which I can't wait for us to get to share with you in its final form, answering the call of this generation for a more balanced, nuanced exploration of the conflict, exposing students to multiple points of view, Israeli and Palestinian, and teaching them communication skills to discuss fraught and sensitive issues before they get to their embattled college campuses. We've imbued all of our work with the spirit of that first trip, captured for me by the photo that's no longer up there, but I hope you all remember. Providing the structure and support we as a people need to confront and speak about what's hardest without shame or fear, to surface what's buried, to look in the eyes of what we're afraid of, but most need to face, to build up the Jewish people's capacity to grapple together with the most difficult dimensions of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict with skill, honesty, and compassion towards all sides, so that we can all engage in the broader thinking and informed, creative problem solving we need to build our greatest hopes for Israel in its 63rd year and beyond. We couldn't be doing any of it if not for all of you, and it's so amazing to look out into this sea of faces of people. I'm reminded as I look out at all of you of so many acts of generosity and kindness and support, trips you participated on, gifts you gave, advice you gave, ways you challenged us and helped us to better ourselves and sharpen our thinking. And I really, I would love to thank every person in this room individually, but I'll spare you 190 thank yous. I do want to name Shayna Tabak. Shayna, will you wave? There you are. Miriam Margles, who we heard from earlier, and Alana Sumka. Alana, my co-director and partner across the ocean, was our very first staff member and has been the bold and tireless leader of our Israel office and Middle East team for the last 5 years. We sometimes call ourselves the Four Mothers because these four women have poured all of their immense creativity and vision into nurturing and growing this organization from its gestation into all it's become. It's such a pleasure also to publicly have an opportunity to thank Brenda Berry, John Lopatin, the Cummings Foundation, the Righteous Persons Foundation, the Jacob and Hilda Blaustein Foundation, the Kaplan Family Foundation, Bikarim, and the Kaminer family, for being our earliest cornerstone supporters and believing in us before we had a website, any organizational infrastructure, and a single staff member. I don't know what they saw in us, but they seemed to know what we were going to become. I also want to thank our event chairs, Jimena Martinez and Michael Hirschhorn and Brenda Berry and Donald Patton, some overlapping names. I now have what is for me actually the greatest honor of the night, which is to introduce Ms. Yona Shem-Tov, who's going to be our new executive director. Yona has been my friend and colleague for years, and I can tell you there is no one whose life is more aligned with our mission than Yona Shem-Tov, who walks our walk and talks our talk in every aspect of her life, stretching herself and supporting everyone around her to confront what is most difficult and most important. She draws people to her, from the Baroness de Rothschild, who courted Yona to envision and co-create a transnational network of Jewish and Muslim social entrepreneurs, to Robert Chazen, the head of NYU's Wagner Skirball program, who sought her out to co-create a national network of Jewish history educators, of which she served as associate director. She comes to us after pursuing doctoral work at NYU, where her research focused on citizenship and history education in Muslim and Jewish schools. And she is a noted public speaker who has presented on Israel and interfaith education all over the world, before the German parliament, at the Rabbis and Imams Conference, etc. You'll all get to know her over the coming months and years and come to know what I can vouch for, which is that Yona is as bold as she is compassionate, as thoughtful as she is dynamic. And I'm so thrilled that we found the perfect steward to take Encounter into the next chapter. Yona accepted our offer less than a week ago, and isn't even officially beginning until September, but it isn't often that someone in such a position would get up to address most of the supporters and stakeholders of the organization that they will lead. So I invite all of you to appreciate her, as Rob Karlbach puts it, holy chutzpah, and give her a warm and generous welcome. Before Yona says a few words to close our evening, it's my honor to present a gift to her. Yona asked me for a few words of inspiration to me. You won't be able to read the words, so I'll just read a little piece of it. It's from an Adrienne Rich poem. I have to cast my lot with those who age after age, perversely, with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world.